Hello, my name is Oliver Herrmann and I'm the CEO of Qfinity. Today I will be presenting on the topic of the recently released GAMP 5 2nd edition at this great AUSTAR Group virtual seminar. I will give you an overview and talk about drivers, updates and new content. This presentation covers an overview on the ISPE GAMP Guides, especially the GAMP 5 2nd edition, how GAMP 5 2nd edition enables innovation, a brief introduction to computer software assurance, and an outlook on what GAMP will focus upon going forward. But first, let me briefly introduce myself. I'm the founder and managing director of Qfinity and have a degree in computer science with focus on business process and workflow management systems. My additional qualifications include Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer, ISACA Certified Data Privacy Solutions Engineer, and Certified Safe Agile Practitioner. Consulting, training, and auditing in the life science industry are the main areas that I have gained extensive experience in the last 20 years. And for the same time, I've been active in numerous industry associations. I'm an active member of the ISPE GAMP and have been a member of the GAMP Global Steering Committee for several years. I've been involved in the development of several GAMP Good Practice Guides and have authored other publications too. To name a few, I was involved in the GAMP Enabling Innovation GPG and I was a member of the extended core team of the GAMP 5 2nd edition. Now let's look at the ISPE GAMP Guides, especially the GAMP 5 2nd edition. GAMP 5 was published in 2008 and became the most accepted de facto standard for the validation of computerized systems globally, even by the regulators. As you could already read on the cover page of the first edition, the GAMP was intended to enable innovation. In 2021, the Good Practice Guide Enabling Innovation was published that addressed critical thinking, agile methodologies, and IT service management. Following that, the GAMP 5 Guide was updated to the 2nd edition. The GAMP Guide aims to safeguard patient safety, product quality, and data integrity using GXP computerized systems. The main goal is to achieve computerized systems that are fit for the intended use and meet current regulatory requirements by building upon existing industry good practices efficiently and effectively. GAMP 5 provides practical guidance that facilitates the interpretation of regulatory requirements, establishes a common language and terminology, promotes a system lifecycle approach based on good practices, and clarifies roles and responsibilities. The GAMP Guide does not define a prescriptive method or a standard, but a pragmatic guidance, approaches, and tools. It makes no sense if people try to apply the principles without expertise in the field and good judgment. GAMP documents are guides and not standards, laws, or regulations. It is always the responsibility of regulated companies to establish policies and procedures to meet applicable regulatory requirements. Consequently, it is inappropriate for suppliers or products to claim that they are GAMP certified, approved, or even compliant. The approach described in GAMP is designed to be compatible with a wide range of other models, methods, and schemes, including quality system standards such as those of IEEE and certification schemes such as the ISO 9001 series. Schemes for assessing and improving organization capability and maturity, such as Capability Maturity Model Integration, CMMI. Software process models, such as the various spiral models or ISO 12207. Software development methods such as rapid application development, agile, regional unified process, or extreme programming, and approaches to IT service management such as the IT infrastructure library, ITIL. GAMP intends to add value instead of only creating documentation strategies. The focus is on those computerized systems with the most impact on data integrity, product quality, and patient safety. Additionally, GAMP allows to leverage of supplier activities to a maximum possible extent while still ensuring fitness for the intended use. It has to be mentioned that the GAMP principles are consistent with the FDA CSA approach. I will come back to this later in the presentation. The computerized system lifecycle encompasses all activities from the initial concept to retirement. The lifecycle for any system consists of 4 major phases: concept, project, operation, and retirement. The computerized system lifecycle described on this slide should not be confused with the need for a defined approach or method for software development by the supplier. The GAMP specification and verification approach is not inherently linear, but also fully supports iterative and incremental methods such as Agile. That was the intention from the beginning. Please remember, we are talking about 2008. The application of this general approach will vary widely depending on the risk, complexity, and novelty of the system. The specification activities have equivalent verification steps to determine whether the specification has been met. A hierarchy of specifications may be required for larger systems, while specifications may be combined for smaller, simpler systems or systems classed as low risk. Specifications should be addressed by appropriate verification steps. Please keep in mind, it is recognized that there are acceptable methods other than those described in GAMP 5. It is not intended to limit innovation and the development of new concepts and technologies. It uses various diagrams to represent the system lifecycle. These diagrams often present relationships in linear representation. This is not intended to constrain the choice of development methods and models. Suppliers should choose and use the most appropriate methods and models, including RAD or prototyping techniques. The GAMP 5 guide is complemented by 11 good practice guides. As already mentioned, the latest one, Enabling Innovation, has been published in 2021. Another key document besides the GAMP 5 is the GAMP Guide on Records and Data Integrity that was published in 2017. This guide is also supported by 3 good practice guides. The latest one, Data Integrity by Design, has been published in 2020. The key principles of the first edition of the GAMP 5 are still valid. Nevertheless, due to the development in the technology and digitalization in the regulated world, an update of the GAMP 5 was necessary, and the GAMP 5 second edition was published in 2022. The GAMP 5 second edition is fully aligned with the underlying good practice guides and the data integrity guides. There are several drivers for the update of GAMP 5. The COVID-19 pandemic underlines the essential role of innovation and technical advance in the protection of public health. The pandemic made very clear that the innovation is essential in providing value to society, controlling costs, and reducing time to market, especially to address emergency situations like the pandemic. But this is also true for all other diseases and conditions that we want to develop cures for. To achieve this, we have to stop the overinterpretation of the regulations and the GAMP guidance. This overinterpretation has led to prescriptive and rigid compliance-based approaches that focus more on compliance, but not on the quality of the systems or the products. For example, some organizations did extensive risk assessments for systems and then tested everything with the same rigor, extent, and level of documentation. This is not cost-effective, wastes resources, and does not adequately manage the risks to data integrity, product quality, and finally, the patient safety. The overall approach, framework, and key concepts remain unchanged. The importance of critical thinking and the application of patient-centric, risk-based approaches aimed at quality and safety versus primarily compliance-driven approaches is further underlined. Concepts of computer software assurance, as discussed as part of the US FDA CDRH Case for Quality program, are also explored and applied. In addition, the specific content of the guide has been updated to reflect the increased importance of IT service providers, including evolving approaches to software development, including incremental and iterative models and methods, and increased use of software tools and automation to achieve greater control, higher quality and lower risk throughout the life cycle. And cloud service providers, XaaS. Consequently, GAMP 5 2nd edition has maintained the overall approach, framework and key concepts, but emphasized the importance of critical thinking as major part of the risk-based approach. Included guidance on incremental and iterative models and methods such as Agile. Addressed software tools and automation for greater control, higher quality and lower risks. And finally, they updated the sections for IT service providers, including cloud service providers. On this illustration, you can see how GAMP 5 arranges the key principles between the user and the supplier. What changed over the years was the interpretation and, as already mentioned, the misleading overinterpretation of these principles. If you understand the logic behind this illustration, you can imagine why these key principles are still valid. For a better understanding, it must be clear that the regulated user is accountable and the supplier is responsible for their activities. Contracts and quality agreements are to be written to clarify the expectations between the parties. Looking at the GAMP 5 2nd edition in more detail, the sections on specifying requirements, electronic production records, operational phase and IT service management have been significantly updated and rewritten. New content, mostly in appendices, has been added for agile methodologies, software tools, distributed ledger systems, blockchain, artificial intelligence and machine learning, and critical thinking. The following ISP initiatives and topic areas are supported, and links and synergies with them have been considered. We talk about knowledge management, APQ, and Pharma 4.0. Knowledge management focuses on how organizations create, manage, and use knowledge throughout the life cycle of a product. It enables organizations to better manage their knowledge as a key asset, in turn improving the effectiveness of the pharmaceutical quality system and providing operational benefits. Advancing Pharmaceutical Quality (APQ) is building industry for industry tools and programs to help companies assess and improve their quality operations. Pharma 4.0, providing guidance aligned with the regulatory requirements specific to the pharmaceutical industry to accelerate Pharma 4.0 transformations. Also known as the Smart Factory, the objective of Pharma 4.0 is to enable organizations involved in the product lifecycle to leverage the full potential of digitalization to provide faster innovations for the benefit of patients. It's time to look at how GAMP 5 2nd edition is enabling innovation in the regulated world. Some companies are achieving compliance by applying an inflexible, not scalable approach to validation. Many documents are created because the validation SOP enforces the creation of these documents. Risk assessments are conducted but are not applied to scale and focus the validation approach. Consequently, massive amounts of documentation are generated that add little to the quality of the systems. To be fair, these approaches can be followed easily without the need to apply critical thinking. But they require a lot of time and resources and does not assure quality. The GAMP approach to validation has already promoted a scalable and risk-based approach that focuses on the areas of high risk. The identification and evaluation of risks and the development of an adequately scaled validation approach for each system requires critical thinking. Critical thinking promotes informed decision-making and good judgment on where and how to apply and scale quality and compliance activities for computerized systems. It's from major importance that critical thinking relies on a robust knowledge of the business process, the product, and the regulated field. Only with this knowledge someone can analyze the potential impact of a system on data integrity, product quality, and the patient safety. During the computerized systems validation, it is important to not only focus on the system and its functionality, but also to consider the data lifecycle. During the life cycle of a computerized system, data is created, processed, reviewed, reported, used, retained, retrieved, and destroyed. Often data are also transferred to other systems for further processing. A clear understanding of the data flow within and out of the system is essential to determine the best approach for the validation through critical thinking. GAMP 5 2nd edition reinforces this approach that has been present in several GAMP data integrity and good practice guides. The management of in-house IT has been automated and matured significantly over the past decade. The need for flexible and scalable validation approaches is also fueled by the increased usage of cloud services and software as a service providers. As there are outsourcing models with varying degrees of delegation to the service providers, you need to apply critical thinking to determine what activities and responsibilities remain in your organization, what activities and responsibilities have been outsourced to the service provider, how you are overseeing and controlling the activities of the service provider as the regulated company that is ultimately accountable. You need to make sure that your in-house activities are aligned to the contractual agreements, like service level agreements and/or quality agreements with the provider, to ensure all critical to quality aspects are adequately covered. Regulated companies more and more want to leverage supplier effort regarding documentation and testing. The challenge is to be seen in the integration of the two life cycles. Usually, whether the supplier develops standard functions which are used by all customers without configuration, the regulated user can reduce the validation effort and focus in the configured and custom-built functions or modules within the implementation project. The configured and custom-built functions or modules are customer-specific and the potential errors can only be found by the customer. But if the supplier offers a SaaS solution, a software as a service solution, it must be clear that the supplier qualification process is from a higher importance. The complexity matters because it could be possible that the solution has both SaaS part and in addition a customer-specific implementation part. The supplier needs more GXP or CSV know-how during the development of the software. The supplier should offer validation packages which can be used by the regulated user to leverage the documentation effort. It is becoming increasingly important to conclude quality agreements that provide clarity regarding services and documents to be delivered. The illustration on this page shows how to separate the activities for the regulated user and the supplier. As you can see, in a SaaS environment, the supplier plays a much more important role regarding the application and the data. The cloud lock-in effect is to be considered as high critical. This means during a SaaS cloud project, the regulated user should start with the end in mind. It must be a contractual object how to get the data out of the system in the case of a contract end. Another area that requires flexible and novel approaches is artificial intelligence and machine learning. The essential question is, how do you validate a system and keep it in a validated state that is frequently retrained and thereby changing its behavior? In the appendix on artificial intelligence and machine learning, it is shown that the existing GAMP 5 principles and phases can still be applied. It provides detailed guidance for the compliant implementation and operation of AI/ML systems, considering their inherently iterative nature as well as data integrity considerations. Another technology that is considered in the GAMP 5 2nd edition is the blockchain. The blockchain establishes trust and transparency among parties by using a combination of cryptography, consensus, smart contracts, and replication. Blockchain has become an important technology in the life science industry, especially when data are processed across several organizations. GAMP 5 2nd edition does not define the technology or discuss the appropriateness of the technology to meet business needs. Rather, GAMP 5 2nd edition provides considerations for organizations to apply when relying on blockchains to support business processes. In the past years, the movement to agile methodologies in software development also had an impact on computerized systems supporting GXP processes. Many people considered the existing GAMP approach as incompatible with agile processes. But planning, specification, verification and reporting activities in GAMP 5 is not inherently linear. These lifecycle activities can also be executed within an iterative approach. But the activities must be supported by robust processes and tools that are required for agile software development anyway. The sections on agile software development explain how to develop compliance systems using an agile approach to quality. Driven by IT management needs and agile software development, many software tools have been developed and adapted. They are helping in keeping an inventory of IT assets or managing requirements and tasks in software development. However, these tools do not directly support GXP-regulated business processes and do not store or process GXP records and data. Still, they are relevant in having control over documentation and therefore should be used in a controlled manner. Controls must be established, but there is usually no need for the validation of these tools. In most cases, these tools are to be seen as GAMP Category 1 software. After all, such tools can enforce continuous documentation and structure, enforce traceability, allow continuous oversight, prevent tampering, and is available to everyone, everywhere. Such tools can replace the current practice to record everything in documents, but only if appropriate controls are in place. The following controls are mandatory: authorization, versioning, backup and restore to keep the records safe, traceability of records between tools and traceability to the business requirements, allow reporting of system status at any point in time. The appendix on software tools provides guidance for a quality approach that would establish the necessary controls. Now it's time for a closer look at the computer software assurance. The current Computer Software Assurance Initiative has its roots in the FDA case for quality. Already in 2015, the validation practices and documentation burden have been identified as a challenge for the introduction of new technologies. To address that, over the past years, the CSA approach has been developed, companies have been piloting this, and the approach has been refined. The FDA has published the draft guidance on this in September 2022. It's important to understand that the primary focus of this guidance is on software with an intended use related to medical devices. But what we learned from the past is that the ideas behind this guidance will be adopted to other industries also. The draft guidance is fully aligned with and included in the GAMP guidance in GAMP 5 2nd edition and the Good Practice Guide Data Integrity by Design. The goals of the CSA approach are to motivate companies to invest in innovative technologies without fearing compliance requirements or compliance burden. The implementation of these innovative technologies should be accelerated by significantly reduced CSV documentation effort. This requires applying the risk-based approach and critical thinking, resulting in a reduced scope and type of the necessary testing. This goes hand in hand with a scalable documentation approach that demonstrates the level of assurance and control necessary for regulators and industry. Still, it is ensuring robust testing for software that has a direct impact on the patient. Critical thinking promotes informed decision-making and good judgment on where and how to apply and scale quality and compliance activities for their computerized systems. Critical thinking relies on knowledge of the business process and on the detailed comprehension and analysis of where the business process can potentially impact patient safety, product quality, and data integrity. The importance of critical thinking and the application of patient-centric, risk-based approaches aimed at quality and safety versus primarily compliance-driven approaches is further underlined. So, what do you need as a potential critical thinker? Business process and data flow knowledge. Comprehension and analysis of potential impact on patient safety, product quality, and data integrity. And robust, logical, and rational selection and scaling of controls and validation activities. This figure illustrates critical thinking for computerized systems. Whereas proactive adoption of a risk-based approach suitable for intended use of the computerized system considers the multi-layers of assurance provided elsewhere within the business process. In other words, combining technical, procedural, and behavioral controls applied throughout the business process is used when assessing the risk of the computerized system. These layers of assurance may exist upstream or downstream of the system within the business process it supports and also include supplier activities. We need to make use of these to ask questions like: what are the critical risks to data integrity, product quality, and patient safety, considering the intended use of the system? How have you reached your GXP relevance or GXP classification? A rational why is a risk high, medium, or low? And do we talk about a functional risk or a GXP risk? What is your thinking behind this? Once we have found answers to these questions, we can use the CSA approach to appropriate test approach consistently. Let's look at this in more detail. As always, only systems with GXP relevance do require assurance efforts anyway. The intended use and the connection to the product is the key driver for focusing the assurance measures to the areas of the risk. For this, all GXP relevant features need to be truly risk assessed considering patient safety and product quality. Only the features with high risk are tested, as it has always been done with a fully scripted test plan and lots of evidences. The features of medium and low risk are tested too, but with reduced width and depth. The focus is to show that a feature of medium risk works or to find problems during the typical usage of the low risk features. For each area or functionality, the risk to the product and/or the patient is determined and then combined with the implementation approach of your system or module. As stated by the GAMP 5 for a long time, custom applications are of higher risk than configurable software. And standard, non-configurable, out-of-the-box software has an even lower risk. Once you combine it, we can determine the risk rating and use that to consistently identify the required testing and assurance activities. But what does that mean to the documentation and the testing efforts? After all, the documentation burden is driving up efforts and costs and preventing innovation. As you can see in this example, the fully scripted testing should only be applied to areas of high and direct risk to the patient, the product, or the data integrity. As always, we would compare actual results with expected results and summarize all pass and fail information in the test summary report or a similar document. For areas of medium risk, test objectives would be defined and the pass or fail of each test objective would be recorded. But the test would not be scripted. There would be no documented predefined expected results, but subject matter experts would verify that these functions would work as needed. For low-risk functions, unscripted ad hoc testing is performed and not recorded in any detail. However, the testing approaches and conclusion statements are created to document the approach and the outcome. We all know our full scripted test plan, but what does unscripted testing looks like? Here you can see an example where the test objectives are provided and the subject matter expert verifies that certain functions like reports or user setup are working as expected. The key enabler for this kind of testing is the expertise of the tester. It must be possible, but still not advisable, to execute fully scripted and painfully detailed test plans by students or new hires. Unscripted testing cannot be done by a student as it requires knowledge of the tool and expertise and experience within the process to assess if things are working as required. The same is true for the ad hoc testing, as there is even less of a script available to the tester. Only if you know what is required by and useful to the users, you can assess if the low-risk areas are working as needed. But again, this way much more testing can be performed, leading to a system that works and supports the process. In summary, the CSA approach provides guidance on how to apply the risk-based approach to testing of computerized systems. This should lead to higher test coverage, scalable test documentation, and improved system knowledge. Ultimately, this will lead to high-quality systems with a reduced documentation burden. But it requires critical thinking, robust quality culture, and documenting of the reasoning behind the risk rating. Specifically, we need to be able to tell even in a few years after we have performed the risk assessment why a particular risk has been assessed as high, medium, or low. What all this means for GAMP moving forward. GAMP aims to continue to encourage innovation and technological advance while managing risks to data, product, and patients. To achieve this, we all need to continue to encourage this technological advance to promote better use of data for the benefit of patients and the public at the very end. Thanks a lot for your time and attention. If any question, don't hesitate to ask.